Hello, and welcome to the weekly session on heartfulness. Today, we'll be taking up a topic called the thought highway. This is a scene that is very familiar to many of us in India, and possibly a daily experience for most of us. But there's a lot of traffic on the road, and there seems to be very little space available for us to drive, right? So, of course, while we need space to drive our bikes and our cars. What about ourselves? We also think. And do we need space to think? What happens if our heads are full of thoughts? That's what today's topic about is thought highway. Let's plunge into it. So in the context of the topic that we talked about, I'm going to put up two numbers, 70,000 and 47%. You may just want to invite your audience to guess what these numbers might mean in the context of the topic. Give them a minute or two, let them take some guesses, wild guesses, it's fine. It just helps break the ice. Interaction at the beginning of the session always helps break the ice and helps the audience draw them into the session. So after you receive a few answers, you might want to hit the button to show them what these numbers really mean. There's been a lot of science research into the human brain and the human mind. Today, science is not only able to use EEG electrodes that are connected to our brains and patched onto our head, and it's able to determine not just whether we're having thoughts or whether we are asleep, but also what kind of thoughts we're having. Because when we get angry, some particular part of the brain, experiences a high level of activity. When we're experiencing sadness, some other part of the brain is getting triggered, and so on and so forth, right? So today, science is really starting to dwell into and making inroads into our emotional and mental makeup as well. So the University of Southern California has determined that an average human being has about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Wow. That's almost as many number of seconds we have in a day. And they go further to say that about almost half of those thoughts are just random. It has no relevance to whatever we're doing. It's what you would call mind chatter. And this is from a study from Harvard. Put that aside, ask somebody from the audience to get up and try and read this gibberish, right? And somebody would bravely volunteer and read, I wandered lonely as. It'll be very slow. They'll be struggling, right? Because they may, why are you struggling? What's the problem here? They might give many answers, but the one that you're looking for is there's no space. There's no space separating the words. Perhaps this is how the same thing, if it happens in our heads, perhaps this is how it would be. There's just a jumble of thoughts, each like traffic on the road, right? Getting on top of each other. And there's just no space for us to have any level of clarity. Even for work to get done, there needs to be clarity of thought. And clarity of thought means that one particular thought is dominant and there are no other thoughts in the vicinity. And that's what clarity really means. But if our head is like this, and unfortunately, and let's say, God forbid, if our head is like this most of the time, what do we expect we will be able to achieve? Nothing, or perhaps close to nothing. Per contra, if we are able to reduce mental chatter and bring it to a state of where, by and large, we don't have mental chatter. Imagine what tremendous amounts of productivity and clarity we'll be able to achieve. So again, then you put this up, ask somebody to get up and perhaps read this, and they'll breeze through. right? I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, and so on and so on, right? So, hey, so what makes the difference, right, is again space. Space is so critical, particularly in the mental sphere, because when there are too many thoughts, which all are kind of stepping on each other's toes, it is very, very difficult to get anything done. Let's draw our attention to one other piece of data, right? That in a study globally, okay, it was reported that 70% of leaders, right, report that they are inattentive at work. I mean, how many times have we been on conference calls or meetings, right? When 20 minutes people have been talking and suddenly somebody says, hey, Kumar, hey, John, what do you think? And suddenly, on the phone, the guy is like, there's a lot of noise. I say, oh, sorry, I missed that. Can you come again? And you know what happened, right? This guy is just zoned out. And when he hears his name called, his brain suddenly wakes up. He's suddenly into the call, but he's not really paid attention and he's not understood the question. So you need to repeat it all over again. So really, right, how productive are we as individuals and how productive are we as a collective team? And how much of inefficiency happens because we're zoning out all the time? Though 70% is a very high number, in the same survey, okay, the Institute for Mindful Leadership, right, they asked this question: how many of them regularly allocate time to enhance productivity? And less than 2% of them have been doing it. So you see the significant gap in terms of where we are on the efficiency scale and how many of us are trying to do something about it, right? It's really, there's a crying need for us to work on ourselves. So that's really what we wanted to cover in this week. The need for space, the need for reducing mental chatter, the need for mental clarity, the need for effortless focus, and how that would probably have a significant impact on the quality and the outcome from our professional life and professional work. Let's give them an experience of relaxation and meditation and ask them how they feel 20, 25 minutes later. And then let's move into closure, closing the session. In closure, we want to always give a couple of takeaways, micro habits, which they can experience during the week, try out, and come back the next week and they can tell us what their experience was. Again, because if people come to sessions just once a week and they're going to do nothing in between, it's pointless, right? It's not going to go anywhere. So we have to do our bit in asking the teams to practice, do their practice regularly during the week as well. So you might want to ask them to meditate, again, 3 days this week, and not meditate for the 3 days, other 3 days or 4 days. Ask them to make a note in a journal. Making a note in a journal makes a big difference, because then they'll be able to look at the notes and say, yes, there was a difference on 2 of the days I meditated. And on the days I didn't meditate, 2 days were very, very bad, right? And if they see a consistent pattern, they will be able to draw the inference themselves in terms of what is the effect that meditation and the heartfulness practices are creating in their lives. So we close the session there. Thank you so much. We'll meet you next week.